Good afternoon, Turks and Caicos. My name is Kevern De Bellott. I am Hazard Mitigation Officer here at the Department of Disaster Management and Emergencies. Recently, the department conducted a series of virtual town hall meetings geared towards hurricane preparedness for the hurricane season 2020. Over the next few minutes, I will be giving a recap of some of the information and graphics that was shared out of the Hazard Mitigation Unit. So join me for the next few minutes where I will discuss about storm surge, one of the most deadly hazards associated with hurricanes. In preparation for hurricane impact, storm surge is one of those hazards we need to pay particular attention to. Data suggests that over 50% of deaths associated with hurricane impact is from drowning, which includes inland flooding but more so storm surge. So the more we understand about this hazard, the better we can prepare and mitigate against disastrous outcomes. As a hurricane moves over the ocean towards land, strong winds that circulate around the hurricane pushes water towards the shore. This causes a rise in sea level that is well above normal or mean sea level. When storm surge coincides with high tide, we have what is called storm tide, and can result in an additional 3 to 5 feet of surge. Now, the way in which surge moves over land can be different for each hurricane. It all depends on the prevailing conditions. But what is important to know is that it can be violent. While we can predict with some level of accuracy the surge height, it is not something that we can predict how violent storm surge can be. So it's important to evacuate areas when told to do so. Here are some of the factors that affect the level of storm surge experience. First, we have the strength of the hurricane, and we're talking about the various categories. So the general principle is that as the category increases, also we see that storm surge prediction increases. So with a category 1, we can see storm surge between 4 to 5 feet, all the way up to category 5, where we can have storm surge in excess of 18 feet. Now this doesn't mean that a category 3 cannot produce the storm surge of a category 5 or higher, because we have much more factors that come into play, as was the case in 2005 with Hurricane Katrina, which impacted the Louisiana area and produced a storm surge of 28 feet, and that was a category 3 hurricane at the time. So we have much more factors like the size of the hurricane, which means the diameter across the bands, the speed of the hurricane, not the speed of the winds, but the speed of the entire system as it moves across the ocean towards land. The angle of approach, we're talking about whether a direct impact or a glancing impact, the tide, low tide or high tide, and the lay of the land or the topography. And this clip would help demonstrate how the lay of the land can affect the storm surge experience. As you see, with the very deep seabeds, we can expect very large waves, but it doesn't really push ashore as far as it would with very shallow seabeds, as is the case of many areas around the Turks and Caicos Islands. Here are some satellite images that show just how similar in geography we are to the Bahamas. As you would recall, the island of Abaco and Grand Bahama was severely impacted by Hurricane Dorian just last year. So the big question is, can Turks and Caicos Islands experience that type of storm surge? So some of the physical features that make us just as susceptible to that type of storm surge are these deep ocean shelves that quickly transition into shallow reef, and also the very large shallow barrier reefs. So yes, the Turks and Caicos Islands are just as susceptible to storm surge as what we saw in Grand Bahama and Abaco. These graphics are intended to help us visually assess storm surge risk across the Turks and Caicos Islands. Here we have Salt Key, and on the left we have a digital elevation model, which is simply a representation of the various elevations across the land surface. So as we move from green to yellow to red, we move from elevations that are low to medium to high. And then we have the black outlines, which represents the buildings. Now if we take storm surge, like that Dorian type storm surge in excess of 18 feet, and we overlay that onto the digital elevation, we can get an idea of what areas can be flooded and to what extent. So on the right we have that information, where the dark blue areas represent areas that will be flooded with a depth between 5 to 6 meters, and as the blues become lighter, also the surge depth decreases, which would represent areas that are increasing in elevation. What we do notice is that a significant amount of buildings are susceptible to storm surge between 1 and 2 meters and 3 and 4 meters. Next we have Middle Caicos. In Middle Caicos, many of the buildings are built on higher elevations, but there are still some areas of concern, like in Conch Bar, in this general area, also in the northeastern quadrant of Conch Bar, and some areas in Lorimer's. In North Caicos, particular areas of concern would be low-lying coastal areas in Sandy Point, along the coast in Whitby, and areas of Bottle Creek and Kew. In South Caicos, buildings located in low-lying coastal areas and areas in close proximity to the salinas are in significant risk of surge depths between 5 to 6 and 3 to 4 meters. Storm surge in Granta can be extensive. Many of the communities are built on the low-lying western coast of the island or close to the salinas. These areas are at significant risk of storm surge depths between 5 to 6 and 3 to 4 meters. Similarly, in Providenciales, many of the highly populated areas are located within flood risk zones. Areas in low-lying coastal zones, close to canals, ponds, or sounds are at significant risk of storm surge. These areas include Downtown, Qtown, Five Keys, areas in Chalk Sound, Blue Hills, Discovery Bay, The Bight, Grace Bay, Leeward, and parts of Long Bay. Know your risk and make plans accordingly. Remember to visit our website at www.gov.tc/DDME, where you can find flood risk maps and much more information to help you prepare for this hurricane season. And remember, be proactive, not reactive.